Good afternoon, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. I'm going to talk a little bit about the foundations of what it means to be knowledgeable in this movement and how we're going to take the world by storm. The only way to make progressive change is through knowledge. The only way to actually get anywhere in this movement is with knowledge of the economy and economics. Now, there are many myths out there that are absolutely destructive to progress. They're destructive to helping the average voter go from being just a zombie for what they've always known to actually entering into a knowledge of truth. Now, to understand how the establishment has kept us down, how they have put the straw man argument out there to try to keep us from ever actually entering into the knowledge that our fiscal policy is how we add money to the economy, how our monetary policy is how we enslave people to debt, okay? Debt that you and I cannot get out of, debt that you and our children cannot get out of. That is private debt, okay? Now, the foundation of neoliberalism is removing fiscal policy from the equation. In other words, removing Congress's ability to add to the economy and putting it then in turn on private debt. By privatizing your debts, they can control the population, they can control wages, and they can keep us fighting amongst ourselves. Okay? This is an extremely critical element of how you look at fiscal policy and how you look at the overall US economy. When you understand that in the 1970s, because of fears of hyperinflation and fears of all kinds of other demons that floated around the world, Milton Friedman told everybody basically, hey, the days of being able to let Congress spend and build new buildings and send us to the moon, think about how NASA worked, okay? Those days are over. We're now going to only adjust interest rates and then everybody can go into private debt. So that is why you've seen the wealth gap grow so much, because debt still gets paid off at the private level. However, fiscal policy, where we could actually expand our economy, has been choked. And so what do we got now? We've got a situation where we have been talked and told and taught about the gold standard, and we've been talked and told and taught about the finality or the finite pool of money from which we can work from. Like we have to dig to get our dollars for our country. The reality is that's bullshit in a chef's salad. It's a lie. So they use this idea that we've got a tax to fund things. We've actually got to spend, the country is broke. It's like this old ratted up, torn down, broke ass piece of shit country that can't do anything, man. It's just lumbering along, man. My God, it's broke. It's like got a tin cup out there. Please give me tax dollars so I can function. But yet we've got a military like a zillion times larger than any other military in the world. Bigger than any other military in the world. Yet here we are. Here we are. And we continue to spend money on the military because both the Republicans and the Democrats have got you convinced that it's for national defense. The reality is it is ultimately modern monetary theory proving itself in the wrong way. Okay? So instead of spending like a drunken sailor on the military, what Steve Grumbine is advocating is the exact same model. The only difference is spending on the population, spending on the public purpose. The public purpose, folks. And we have not had runaway inflation as we have sat there and built tanks and airplanes and bombs. We've gotten zero value out of it too. But we have thrown tons of money at it. Tons and tons and tons of money. We never run short of money when it comes to going and spending on the military. We use it as our jobs program. We use it as our Kickstarter for small and private business, all the government contractors that work in the military. Now, what would happen if instead of us being so stupid, and let's be fair, it is stupid, to believe that the only way that the US government can spend money is on the military, What if we in turn spend that money on the public purpose? Well, what is the public purpose? Well, good news. Tonight I'm going to have a guest, Joe Firestone, on with me. Joe was on a little while back, a few weeks ago, and we talked at length about the debt instruments that the Federal Reserve uses, that our commercial banks use, and that our fiscal policy and our monetary policy use. Now, we're going to talk today, like I said, about the public purpose. Public purpose has long since been forgotten. We have been widgets in a machine. We have been cogs in a wheel. We have been nothing as far as human beings go. Our lives, our well-being, our existence has mattered very little. So what we've done here as a result of that is we've allowed them to convince us that we're so broke we've got to cut Social Security, that we're so broke that we've got to cut every other public service. And they've convinced you that the only way around that is to tax. Now, there are some truly bad people in the world, and they're progressive, some of them, who try to quote unquote debunk modern monetary theory. I would say that they're bad people because their goal is not to read, it's not to learn. They have no interest in actually moving beyond lies that they tell themselves. They have even gone so far as to call people who proclaim modern monetary theory as libertarians or Kochbot or one of these other bullshit right-wing things. The reality is, a libertarian believes in small to no government. They believe in very, very small government. They believe in a government that doesn't have a lot of services, but these very, very small, very niche-y things that are just, protection. Very, very small, conservative, constitutionally correct government. I, on the other hand, am advocating a much larger government presence, not in terms of oversight, but in terms of being an employer of last resort, but in terms of being able to provide services to the population so that our basic needs, not our wants, our needs are met by our government. Because who is our government supposed to be? It's supposed to be for the people, by the people. We the people. But right now, it's only serving corporate interests. And so what they've done is a masterful deception of keeping us trapped, believing we've got to take money from each other in order to fund the things that we want. They keep us trapped in our own paradigm. They keep us trapped in this way. So what happens is the people that are marginally above others feel like you're going to try and take their money and bring them back down. So they don't want this stuff. They avoid it. They're like, you're not raising my taxes to pay for stuff because you're too lazy. You're too lazy to make a move of your own. You're too lazy to actually do something with your life. So they fight against raising taxes to fund things. So we never, ever, ever get single payer. We always get bastardizations like the ACA. We never actually get, folks, if climate change is real, we don't have time to dick around fighting the GOP about a tax war. So some incredibly terrible people try to say that I'm saying we shouldn't tax the rich or whatever. I'm saying this. Let's make sure that this ends up in one of these snippet, clip it, bullshit YouTube videos that someone who's not very bright puts together. What we're talking about here, folks, is taxes, since the act of taxation does not actually fund Medicare for all. It does not actually fund single-payer healthcare at all, or pharmaceutical, or free, any of the things that we want. It doesn't solve our energy, our green energy. It doesn't pay for anything. So if it doesn't actually pay for it, what I am saying is if you want to fight a tax war, if you want to soak the rich or whatever, let that be a separate bill over here because you want to affect public policy. That is an expression of public policy according to the Constitution. Okay? So that public policy that you're doing right there, what you can actually do now is make that a separate thing so that single-payer healthcare is not held hostage while the Grover Norquists of the world and the libertarians of the world don't sit there and fight tooth and nail against you having healthcare. People are dying because of stupidity, because of people that are so stuck so stuck in being wrong, so desirous of being wrong, that they would rather you die. They would rather you literally die so that they can fight a tax war, not realizing that over the course of time, we have seen repeatedly, as soon as we bring a bill to the table, the first thing is, how are you going to pay for it? And then what happens? It gets bogged down in committee and it never happens. Do you know John Conyers has had a bill forever out there about full employment to have a federal job guarantee? John Conyers, look it up. And what has happened? People say it's too expensive. When we talked about single payer, what did they say? It's too expensive. When you talk about converting to green energy, what do they say? It's too expensive. So when the people talk about fighting a tax war before they're willing to fund initiatives for people, they're murderers, whether they like it or not. They're a murderer by proxy. Their ignorance is no excuse for the killings they do. Their ignorance is a shameful, shameful place to be. It's something they should wear like a scarlet letter. It's not everybody that does it. When you don't know something, when you're just ignorant and you've never heard the truth or been presented with links or presented with experts that can explain the truth, then it's one thing. But when you've been exposed to the truth and you continue to perpetuate a lie, well, that makes you a liar and it makes you a murderer. And I won't pull any punches. I will flat out call people that do this murderers. Because the people that are suffering under the bridge, that don't have a pot to piss in, that don't have clothes, that are living in dirty, filthy, wet clothing in the middle of winter, that don't have anywhere to eat, don't have food, don't have sustenance, don't have a means to get a career, don't have a means to do anything, are sitting there waiting around, drinking polluted water because of a tax war that some warped person decided was more important than serving the public purpose. It takes a special kind of evil, once presented with truth, to dig their heels in and lie. It takes a special kind of evil to stand on a soapbox, speak about that which you do not know, and lead people astray. It takes a special kind of evil and worthlessness to perpetuate, to puff up with ego and arrogance when you don't know, and lead people astray, and by extension, kill people, the elderly who don't get medication because of this. The person perpetuating that is a murderer. Don't mince words. Why mince words? Let's keep it real, yo. Let's make sure that we call a spade a spade. When someone fights against services based on how are you going to pay for it, they're a murderer. Let's keep the lingo clear, crystal clear. So we're going into this and we're saying to ourselves, hey, robots are taking away jobs that we know of today. Many of the jobs you and I know about today will be done away with automation. But the only constant in life is change. So if we accommodate change and we look for what the public purpose is, and we realize self-actualization, we should be doing more with our lives than just subsisting. We should be doing more with our country and our resources than just subsisting. You know, I went to a hospital last night with my son. And in the hospital, I looked around, and we're in central Pennsylvania. And there was a lot of people there that you could tell led a really, really hard life. Their face had the wear and tear of years of being outside and lots of like just basic, you could just see the years of work, hard work, and really, really, really a different place. It was almost like being in a different world. And I looked at them and I thought to myself, you know, they don't know what they don't know, but they have been put through the ringer for the man. They've been put through the ringer unnecessarily. They should have the right to self-actualize in whatever fashion that looks like. And we've placed such a premium on classist things like education, which is very important, which I'm a strong advocate of. And I believe that people that have taken the time to learn this stuff deserve some respect simply for the effort, if nothing else. But that does not preclude us from different ways of learning. That does not preclude us from different approaches to life. Does not preclude us from different wants and needs, but there are basic needs that we all have. Our government has chosen to capitalize on our needs. They have perpetuated the bank giveaways by forcing us into private debt through austerity measures aimed at closing the deficit or cutting the debt. The debt. What is the debt, folks? What is the debt? It is the national assets to a penny. It is private sector savings. It is the sum total of treasury bills. And why do they sell treasury bills? Is it to fund government? Not at all. They sell treasury bonds to bleed off reserves, etc., to enable them to defend a interest rate, a Fed interest rate. They defend the interest rate at all costs by selling bonds. They don't fund government. In other words, what they're doing is providing the means to have this interest rate that enables us to go into private, P-R-I-V-A-T-E, private debt. Not our government. Our government can do this stuff with a keystroke, but it's not there like debt like you and I know it. Yet people, really, really, really bad people, bad people, sit there and say, oh my God, we're 20 trillion in the hole. Oh my God, the government credit cards run through the roof. It's not true. It's a lie. It's a lie. And then they come up with the anti-Semitic Rothschild crap. And then they come out with this whole, heck, the Fed isn't even owned by U.S. citizens. The Federal Reserve Board of Governors is a U.S. agency. It is a part of the government. It is a .gov website. It is the ingress and the egress of our monetary system. So what happens? You have private banks that connect into the system so that we can, in effect, fix monetary policy back and forth. There is an ingress and an egress. Do you know what I mean by that? If you don't, let me explain. There's the way to come in, and then there's the way to go out. In networking world, you would consider it a network interface device or a router or a gateway. This is the point where the money comes in or the zeros and ones come in. It looks in the router, it finds an address, and it sends it back out. Well, that's kind of what the Federal Reserve is a scorekeeper in the center of it all. It's what separates the Treasury from the rest of the world. And that's it. And this is that center hub. And it is not some wild conspiracy. It's not. It's so unsexy, it would drive you crazy. And that's why the people that don't know what I'm saying go out there and spin myths and yarns. The issue is, what do we want to do with our national treasures? Not what do we want to do with our hard-earned tax dollars. Our taxes are fundamentally used as a tool for cooling off an overheating economy, maintaining a certain inflation rate, etc. The reality is, we could lower taxes significantly, or we could shift them. It doesn't matter because they don't fund. They literally don't fund any of the spending plans. They're separate issues. As long as you understand what I'm saying, you don't lie and say I said something I didn't say. As long as you deal with the truth, which is what I'm saying, the act of funding things is irrelevant. Our government writes a bill into existence, the money is there, and we spend it. That's how it works. That's fiscal policy. Monetary policy is, hey, within our reserve system, we swap debts around on the back end to enable fighting for a target interest rate that enables you and I to get in private debt. Fiscal policy, we expand the money supply. Monetary policy, we defend a target interest rate. Do you understand this? Because anybody that lies and says otherwise is really hurting our children. They're really a murderer by proxy if they know better but say wrong. If they don't know better, then they're just ignorant and we can educate them. But anybody that says otherwise is wrong. It's not, maybe they're not a liar. Maybe they're just wrong. And maybe they'll learn today and over the next several days. As tonight I have Joe Firestone. Tomorrow I'll have Ellis Winningham. And we're going to spend an extra long time talking about